It was a pivotal crossroads for America's favorite party band to make the jump to become the world's biggest rock and roll band. Up next, we break down Van Halen 1984 song by song, including a great story about Eddie Van Halen from his friend and fellow guitarist Steve Stevens.
He was so blissfully unaware of how great he was.
We go back to the exciting and turbulent year of 1984, next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you love the music of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, you're going to want to subscribe below to our channel right now so you never miss an episode of our daily features, stories of the songs straight from the artists, and make sure to check us out on Patreon to become an insider. We got a new program starting there this week. Now today, we're going to break down one of my favorite albums of all time, song by song, the grand spectacle of rock and roll, Thy Name Be 1984. The sixth studio album LP by Van Halen. It sold over 25 million copies around the world for good reason. The build-out for one of the biggest selling albums in history was surrounded by bitter tension, with the fractured relationship, we've talked about it before, between the iconic leaders of the band, Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth, hanging in the balance. We've talked about some of the songs off of this album before, but today we're going to get down to brass tacks. So sales for Van Halen records steadily declined from the mammoth success of Van Halen's self-titled debut album, the greatest debuts of all time, to their fourth album, Fair Warning. There was a bit of an uptick on their fifth album, Diver Down, but it was far from the huge numbers that Van Halen and Van Halen 2 generated. Such was the state of affairs for one of the greatest rock bands of all time in 1983. Following the release of Diver Down, Eddie Van Halen was dissatisfied by the concessions he had made to Van Halen frontman David Lee Roth and to Warner Brothers producer Ted Templeman at the time. Eddie was disheartened about Diver Down, an album comprised, mostly of cover tunes and songs that were dusted off the shelf, if you will. The record left him unfulfilled creatively, and he was badly in need of rejuvenation. By the time the calendar turned to 1983, Eddie was in the process of constructing his own studio, of course naming it 5150 after the California law code for the temporary and voluntary psychiatric commitment of individuals who present a danger to themselves or others due to mental illness. With Don Landy, the band's longtime engineer and later producer on the 5150 and OU812 recordings. The building project was cathartic and exhilarating for the legendary musician. While the soundboards and tape machines were being installed, Eddie began experimenting on synthesizers to pass the time. There were no presets, said Templeman. He would just twist off until it sounded just right, end of quote. At the new 5150 studio, he composed Van Halen's follow-up to Diver Down, seeking relief from interference from Roth or Templeman. Eddie called this period Phase 1 of Don and Ed. To make the workplace as congenial as possible, there was a compromise between the two creative factions in the band. A mixture of keyboard-heavy songs and, of course, the intense hard rock for which the band was known for. If you asked Templeman or Roth what they predicted for Van Halen's sixth album, you would hear fear and doubt, with the belief that fans would revolt against their Guitar Hero's fascination with synthesizers. Eddie, on the other hand, was convinced that Van Halen was in dire need of artistic expansion, and the evolution would vault them from America's favorite party band to the most prolific group on planet Earth. Unlike the previous 5 studio albums that were recorded in just a few weeks, 1984 took nearly a year to finish. To put that time frame in perspective, Van Halen's first album was completed in only 5 days. 5 days. 1984 was released on January 9th of that year, kicking off one of the most glorious times in popular music history, let it be said. Said it a few times on here anyway. I believe that 1984 was the greatest year in music history, bar none. Some will argue 66, some will say 71, some throw out an 8 in 1987. I don't think any of them come close to 84. It was a year where you had the biggest blockbuster albums ever with hit single after hit single to the point where These albums, they played like greatest hits albums. And the best part of it is that they were great with a capital G. Albums that are still mind-blowing today, albums that never get tiresome, that sound fresh even right now. There were magical albums that threaded the needle perfectly between art and commerce. Commercial juggernauts with compositions that are artistically superior, really. 1984 was the melting pot of rock, pop, and soul. It seemed to run the gauntlet. I'm cheating a little here because I'm talking about some of the holdovers from the year before that were still dominating radio and our culture in 84, like Michael Jackson Thriller and The Police Synchronicity, Def Leppard Pyromania, and then, of course, Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA, Prince, Purple Rain, Tina Turner, Private Dancer, and, of course, Van Halen, 1984. 1984 was a revelation, a hard rock crusader that changed everything, and I mean everything. Van Halen was in charge of everything at that point, and Eddie Van Halen crossed over the all-time threshold at that moment. What I mean is that he crossed over to become the biggest guitarist in the history of the universe. I mean, you can argue Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix. I get it, of course. I'm not even going to go there, though. I'm just saying quite simply, when 1984 came out, Eddie Van Halen became Mickey Mouse. Everyone on every continent knew who he was. They knew his music. No other guitarist can claim that. They can't. I still can't believe that he's gone. I mean, I love hearing Eddie's stories. And before we go into this 1984 breakdown, I want to share a recent story from an interview I did with Steve Stevens, Billy Idol's guitarist, that I think is going to put a smile on your face about Eddie Van Halen.
The last thing they expected was Jump, the keyboard. Eddie's playing keyboards now. And I thought that gave me strength because, if he can do it and be accepted as expressing himself on another instrument, so can I, So, I didn't always have to shove the guitar in people's face. If it was a keyboard I was going to play, sure, great.
You and Eddie both have those big guitar solos with Michael Jackson. That made those songs, helped make those songs such huge rock songs. Did you ever meet Eddie?
Oh yeah. We were friends. The first time I met him was he invited me to play at the NAMM show with him as a guest, and I went over to his house. And great story is that Valerie was trying to keep him sober, and so I show up at the house. I'm gonna hang and jam with Eddie Van Halen. So I hire a limousine, and I got 2 bottles of Cristal. Ding dong. Valerie enters the door. Hey, I'm here for. She goes, oh no, oh no, another knucklehead. So we did the NAMM show together, and this was his father had passed away soon before that. So mostly what we talked about we didn't really talk guitars. Why would we? That's what we did. And, everybody and their mother wanted to know about how Ed came up with his guitars and all this. And, he didn't need me to, we talked about our family and our dads and how our dads helped us in our music and stuff. So we bonded over that. When we did Whiplash Smile tour, Ed came and joined us on stage for Moni Moni. And then when I worked with Vince Neil, we supported Van Halen for 6 weeks. And that was great. It was just great. Our friendship, why it worked, was that he knew I wasn't trying to be Eddie Van Halen. I didn't, as a matter of fact, the solo that I do in Billy's show to this day is a flamenco inspired guitar solo. And that came about because when we were opening with Vince for Van Halen, Vince goes, hey man, you got to do a guitar solo. I go, I'm not going to play an electric guitar solo because in about, an hour, this guy's going to come up there and play Eruption. That is the guitar solo.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that. And I said, yeah, but the thing I do, one thing I could do is this, I play flamenco guitar. I'll do this kind of classically inspired solo. It's nothing like what he would. And I think, and I remember him coming up to me, goes, that solo you do is phenomenal. It's really great. He said he loved listening to it and watching it.
Wow.
And same with me. I'd watch him every night. I mean, every night I'd watch that guy, for 6 weeks. And he was just brilliant. He was brilliant. Me and Billy were talking about Ed recently, and we said there wasn't a moment he didn't have a guitar in his hands from the moment he got to the venue. And it was like another appendage to him. It was never like, oh, now he's got the guitar. And, it seemed like he came out of the womb with that thing, and he was so blissfully unaware of how great he was.
As we go into this 1984 breakdown, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the glasses that I wear every day. If you go to Zenni.com, you can design your very own frames that fit you because you shop according to the shape of your face. You can ensure that, you always have a variety of fantastic and very distinctive eyewear that will give you some spark. Check it out at Zenni.com today. So let's break down side one of this monstrous, exhilarating album, starting with the title track. Album opens, of course, with the 96-second synthesized instrumental with the futuristic intrigue of George Orwell's dystopian novel with the same title. The origin of the 1984 track has always been the subject of intense debate. According to Eddie and Don Landy, the wordless piece was culled from 45 minutes worth of synth experimentation by Eddie Van Halen. Michael Anthony's long-standing bass technician, Kevin Dugan, actually revealed that the opening title track instrumental from the album, played by Edward Van Halen, originated from a Roland bass synthesizer passage. It was created specifically to be placed as an intro for Anthony's in-concert bass solos. And Dugan also claimed that he and Anthony wrote and programmed it together. The 1984 instrumental syncs perfectly into Eddie's synthesizer interlude of Jump, track number 2 on Van Halen's milestone achievement. The development of Jump rewinds to the back of a tour bus in the late 70s. This is where Eddie Van Halen began creating a chord sequence that went through multiple iterations moving into the early 80s. Eddie's original melody of his pet project embraced more pop sensibilities when he was inspired by the synthesizer sound used in Daryl Hall and John Oates' #1 smash, Kiss on My List, from 1981. As the track continued to evolve, though, Eddie submitted it to his bandmates. He was hoping to develop a song over his music bed to be included on the 1981 album Fair Warning. But his brothers rejected it. Eddie resubmitted the track for consideration for Van Halen's 82 album Diver Down, but his bandmates, once again, nixed the idea. It was then that Eddie exerted his role as the leader of Van Halen and refused to go against his instincts anymore about the future of Van Halen, starting with the recording of Jump, using the musical arrangement he'd been crafting for so many years.
Who said that? Baby, how you been?
Eddie's power play to incorporate synthesizers into the Van Halen sound was rewarded with the group's first and only #1 hit on the Billboard Hot 100. I mean, this put him out into the stratosphere. It really did. Jump was that kind of a song. It was the lead single from 1984, and the song remained on the top of the singles chart in America for 4 consecutive weeks.
Go ahead, jump. Jump.
For many young kids coming of age in that sprightly year, it was their introduction to Van Halen. In spite of his disdain for the instrumental track, though, DLR wrote some inspired lyrics for Jump that propelled the song into one of the world's most popular stadium rock anthems. Actually, in his memoir, Crazy from the Heat, David Lee Roth admitted that he didn't want Ed to go from a guitar hero to a synthesizer techie, but he says he now enjoys the song. How could you not? Additionally, in his memoir, Roth confided that he wrote the lyrics to Jump after watching TV news coverage of of a man waffling as to whether to commit suicide by jumping off of an LA skyscraper. We actually covered Jump in detail. You can look that up.
Might as well jump. Go ahead.
The next track on side one of 1984 is the speed racing adventure of Panama. If there was any doubt that Van Halen was going to deliver full throttle rock and roll on 1984, the band obliterated the notion by shifting the album to overdrive with Panama. Panama was the third single from 1984. It rolled to number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100. Should have been a number one hit. The brazen flamboyance of David Lee Roth, the genius musicianship of Eddie Van Halen, Michael Anthony, and Alex Van Halen, along with the inventiveness of Ted Templeman and Don Landy, it just made Panama a testosterone-injected thrill-kill cult ride. The ingenuity involved in creating, the heat-rising theatrics in the bridge, that's a great story in itself. In that powerful section of the song, Eddie can be heard revving his 1972 Lamborghini Mira S, pushing the engine to the max to give Panama just breathtaking authenticity.
Reach down between my legs.
The car was actually backed up to the door of Eddie's 5150 recording studio, and they attached microphones to the car's exhaust pipe to get that roaring sound effect. With Jump and Panama back-to-back on the album, it gave the band maybe the greatest back-to-back power punch in the entire decade. Track number 4 on side 1 of 1984 is Top Jimmy, a Diamond Dave composition about lead vocalist James Paul Konsek, known as Top Jimmy. He was nicknamed Top Jimmy while working at a taco stand outside of A&M Records in Hollywood and moonlighting as a blues vocalist wherever he could get a gig. After hacking around for a few years in various outfits, Konsek formed Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs in 1980. Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs began playing weekly gigs at clubs in Hollywood. The act attracted a cult following in the LA music scene. Left Coast music journalist Chris Morris labeled Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs as LA punk's house band. Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pigs concerts, they often featured guest appearances on stage by artists like Tom Waits or Stevie Ray Vaughan and David Lee Roth. Diamond Dave discovered Jimmy performing at a rowdy hole in the wall called the 00 Club while doing some late night carousing in Hollywood. Known for that. He became a big fan and also a friend of Jimmy.
Friends of mine just the other night went to hear this cool cat blow.
Covertly, Dave was a financial backer for the 00 Club and would often hold court in a private VIP room upstairs in the loft area of the bar, protected by DLR's personal bodyguards. Roth admired Top Jimmy so much that he paid him the ultimate tribute that a rocker can give by writing a song about him. Top Jimmy cooks, Top Jimmy swings. He's got the look, woo, Top Jimmy, he's the king.
Stop Jimmy, he's the king.
Roth's lyrics were sung over an existing musical bed with finger-picking and electronic undertones referred to as Ripley, who is the designer of the unique stereo guitar that Eddie used on that track. Sadly, Top Jimmy Konsek died from liver failure in 2001. Jimmy used to tell his friends that he and Roth had discussed working on an album of country tunes together, actually. But that idea never materialized. That would have been cool to hear.
Oh, Jimmy!
Drop Dead Legs is the last track on side 1.
Drop dead legs, pretty smile.
Drop Dead Legs is a lusty DLR narrative about a man's fascination for a woman's gams. Eddie's musical arrangement drew inspiration from AC/DC's Back in Black. After a grinding melodic structure through most of the song, Eddie ends the track with a bluesy guitar solo over a wicked coda. Drop Dead Legs also features those strong background vocals by Michael Anthony and Eddie. You just can't say enough about the background vocals on Van Halen records because they're such an important part of that Van Halen distinction. So that's side one of Van Halen 1984, back when that really meant something. I remember wearing down side one on my vinyl, I had it on cassette as well, my copies, from playing Jump in Panama back to back so much. And then when I discovered side 2 weeks after getting the album, it just all came full circle with dynamite tracks like I'll Wait, co-written by the one and only Michael McDonald, and Hot for Teacher, of course. It just transcended the blockbuster album. We're going to break down side 2 in a follow-up video very soon with some more stories from interviews. Having said that, I really want to hear from you about 1984, about hearing it for the first time. What stands out to you? What were the songs that stood out? Is there a better 1-2 punch than Jump in Panama? Let us know in the comments. If you like our content, we do invite you to subscribe so that you never miss out on our daily content, interviews with the greatest artists, breaking down the greatest songs. You're not going to get this anywhere else. Subscribe below, be a part of the community, and get 1984 on vinyl. You can do that at the link below. Also, check us out on Patreon for even more content. Help us keep this music alive. It's very important. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay safe out there.